So if we start to zoom in a little bit now, we talked about the philosophy. Now, if we zoom in a little bit and we look at a macro training plan. So if we assume, which I think is a fair assumption, that an athlete, especially a time crunched one, only has 3 levers they can pull in terms of their training sessions. They have the frequency of their training sessions, they have the duration of their training session, so how long is a session, and then they have the intensity within that session. How should they think about manipulating these 3 variables: frequency, duration, and intensity?
Mm-hmm. So I think a general approach is always, and that is something what you find in all the training exercise books. If you bring up intensity, you have to decrease the volume. So if we talk about one specific session, if you do, for example, a VO2 max session, no matter in which sport, for sure, this is the session who should not be probably a 3 or 4 hour session. But this is the short session. If you're doing something with an easy endurance, fat metabolism training, easy endurance training, so aerobic endurance training, for sure, this session can be much longer. So basically, these are already 2 parameters where you that are working vice versa. So if you increase volume, you decrease intensity, and the same in the other way around. And that is for one single session, but it's also for your weekly or your monthly training. Let's say if you're training, for example, like 3 weeks loading and 1 week's recovery, then basically in these 3 weeks loading, when you go up with the volume step by step, normally in the last week, you probably decrease intensity to be able to have a higher volume. And then, like you said, if it comes to density, so how often should you train? I think this is then the last parameter to adapt. So basically, first you increase volume, after you add intensity, and the last one is that you then open up some more training days, or you put more sessions with a shorter rest period. And that's exactly why you are doing this, because if you go higher in density, the recovery time is shorter, and that's what you have to take care of. And I always say, and that's the same for the professional, in the first training phase, you always have to build up some resilience. So resilience, I mean that your body is able to support the training load that you want to give to the body.
Yeah.
And that is for all the systems, bones, tendons, no matter what it is. And this needs a certain amount of time before you start then with the real training process. And that is similar from the world-class athletes to the amateur athlete.
Unfortunately, there's a situation in the cycling coaching economy where everyone is a cycling coach. The guy who decorates your house, the painter and decorator, he'll also do a bit of cycling coaching for you on the side. There seems to be thousands of cycling coaches, but that doesn't mean there's thousands of good cycling coaches. What I worry with cycling coaching at the moment is that they've taken the philosophy from training the top level guys, and they are applying this to time-crunched riders. And by that I mean, if we look at data on what we know is good for somebody long-term, like the amount of time under tension they need with strength and conditioning each week, the importance of mobility exercise, the importance of stretching, core work, physiotherapy, all these supportive stuff. But you take a rider who only has 10 hours a week for total training time because of family and work commitments, and they go into one of these amateur coaches. This amateur coach now allocates their full 10 hours a week to on the bike and quite a lot of intensity into that. I feel like they're missing so many of the benefits from strength and conditioning, mobility, all that other stuff listed.
I think it's really important to, and that's why it's good to have a coach, also to put priorities. So exactly what you say, depending on the time that you have, you should fix what can you put into the training and so with which training do you have the biggest effects. So if you train for a cycling marathon, for example, for sure, the most important thing is to be on your bike. So if you just have 8 hours of training, or if you have 8 hours of training, probably you cannot put 4 hours from these 8 hours into strength training, because this is not the limiting factor at some point. So you have always to see how much time do you have, and then make prioritization of depending on your goal. If you do a sprint triathlon, if you're doing, like I said, a cycling marathon, a cycling race, or whatever it is, and there you can also learn from the pro. You can make some kind of periodization. For example, an amateur athlete in the winter, basically, probably the weather is not so good. You train a lot indoor. probably there you can put more focus on strengths and more focus on core and so on. And then coming into the season, you can reduce that and then really train in the sport that you want to be good. So to find the right balance here, because with amateur athletes, normally you don't start the season in January like the professionals are doing, but you start your season probably March, April, May, somewhere there. So you have enough time that you can spend on building your endurance. So it's always finding the right balance. So how much time do you have? And then looking also about how is your weekly plan. So probably from Monday to Friday, you just have every second day 1 hour. Probably there you can put some intensity if you have just 1 hour. And then on the weekend, when you have more time, you can probably put your longer session. So that's why the training plan has to be adapted to your specific situation.
Is there something that you wouldn't skimp on? Do you think we should be doing mobility and strength and conditioning all season around?
So I think what is important is the mobility and core stability. And so basically that your body has resilience. So basically that, for example, if you are 3 hours on the bike and you get always back pain, for sure you have to do something. So you should prepare your body that it's ready to support the load that you want to put. We talk about cycling, so that we want to put in cycling. I think if you're doing now squats or bench press or leg press or whatever, this is not going to make you necessarily faster on the bike. This can give you some basic strengths, but the transfer from the strength exercise to the bike is probably the 50-50. Probably you're working more with, plyometrics, something what is a little bit more functional. And this is something what you then should keep over the whole season. But it's not a 1 hour session 3 times a week. It's probably just a 20-minute session 3 times a week. So keeping it short, but continuously doing it. It makes no sense to make core training at the beginning of the season 3 times a week, 1 hour, and then skipping it somewhere when you start to race, because then you will lose it. Because everything what you don't train, you will lose again. So better to, from the beginning on, to build something something what you can do consistently, and then reduce it to the minimum, what is really necessary for that sport.
If you enjoyed this video and you want to keep binge watching the content, check this video. It's a cracker. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. That way I can catch you in the next one. See you then.